Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're playing the new Banished seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which after we get our starting hand, our entire deck gets banished. That means no drawing cards, so short, high-tempo rounds, and that's exactly what this deck does well, so let's go give it a look. So today we'll be playing a Monsters Carapace Ogroids deck because since we don't have any card draw in this event, that means rounds are generally very short, and since Ogroids are very high-tempo archetype, that works really well. It also means that because we don't have any cards in our deck to tutor out with tutoring special cards, we can load up our deck with tons of Ogroids that we don't even need to play. In many cases, they'll just get banished at the beginning of the match if they're hanging out in our deck, which means it's easier to power up King Chrum. So he is 23 points, which is insane, the amount of carryover you can get on this guy. It also means that because we don't have any tutoring special cards, we can also throw in a Renfri, so use your original leader ability charges on Carapace relatively early, and you can break out Renfri for some pretty serious value from her as well, especially if you can, for example, increase the power of one of your units by its base power, since we have some really high base power cards. That is incredible. Then we have some other carryover coming from She Who Knows, and as long as you have at least 25 points in a row, you can get carryover from her as well. Just be a little bit careful if you play her and also King Chrum in the same round, then She Who Knows is going to give that carryover on King Chrum, who probably already was going to get that resilience anyway. So try to play them in separate rounds if you can, or, you know, there's of course always the chance that you just get one of them in your hands and the other one ends up in your deck somewhere and you never see it over the course of the match. So it gives you a little more consistency in that way as well. Tugo, tempo, as well as being a bit of a engine as well, if you can get multiple cards on the same value and get the might going relatively early. So those are some of our biggest cards. Jotunn, of course, a big point slam. Golyat no longer has a downside because your opponent doesn't have any cards in their deck, so even if Golyat does get destroyed, nothing bad happens. So that makes it safer, and then Pugo, another high tempo card as well. You do have a few engines, and of course, in general, you want to try to get those on the board early, so Nekkers being one of them. Nekker Warrior, potentially, if you get caught with this being one of the only Thrive cards you have in your hand. Phooca as well, being the other one. But the other thing is, because we don't have card draw, that means you probably need to play the Enraged Cyclops pretty early on, because if you don't play it on your first few turns, you're not getting any more Cyclops in your hand later on. So that makes it a little tricky. And then we also have Ogre Warrior, which can be a really big finisher if you do have a relatively long round. But of course, as we were just saying, it is possible that the rounds could get considerably shorter since you aren't drawing cards in between rounds. It's not without its challenges, but because we have so much tempo, this deck can be incredibly effective in this event, especially with all the carryover we can get from either King Chrum and or She Who Knows. One thing you need to be wary of, though, is that there are a lot of very tall decks in this event, so there are a lot of tall removal-centric decks as well, so you need to be careful, but basically we're hoping that we have so many tall cards that are so powerful that even if one or two of them get answered, we still have enough points to get the job done. Now let's go see it in action. Alright, so going up against Scioa'tael here, and they'll go first. Alright, so we have several big cards here with Chrum, She Who Knows, both giving us some carryover potential, and Tugo giving us some engine potential that could potentially combine well with the Nekker. A couple of Enraged Cyclops, need to be a little bit careful with those, so we still have time to get them boosted, especially when we have at least one non-Ogroid in hand. I think let's dump the Ice Troll. Golyat, better from a tempo standpoint, for sure. And then Ice Giants, we might be able to do better than that, even Phooca potentially. Okay, Nekker Warriors. Questionable. Alright, it's Dwarven Chariot. And they got some hand buff as well. So at 7 points, we could drop Nekker. That is a card we'd like to play early. For what it's worth, we would like to play a lot of our cards in the same round so that we can get the Thrives boosted while also still making sure we have enough Ogroids in our hand to get the Enraged Cyclops to power up, and while still having enough points on the board for Sabbath and for Might. So we could make the case for just passing right now, and hopefully in doing so, making a longer round 2. Granted, if they drive past in round 2, that means we run the risk of not having any opportunity for carryover from either She Who Knows or from Chrum. So you know what? You can make a case either way, but I'm going to try to play at least a little bit in round 1. Hopefully that means the round goes long enough that we can get to some of those point thresholds. Giant Slayer, they don't have armor unless they do this, okay. Talk about resilience, they just got some. It's not nearly as much as we might be able to get soon. So I don't think we need to be that concerned, and now this is no longer going to deal any more damage because they've already destroyed the target that they went after. So let's go Phooca here. Alright, they're going for the hand buff now. And they had the hand buff stratagem as well, which does immediately make me a little bit suspicious of things like a Glace, of course, although they haven't done too much card-wise. Well, no, it's Sheldon. Okay. Okay. So, they have played one more card than us. However, they do have at least 5 points of carryover here. So, how does that factor into the timing that we'd like to have with what we play here? The Cyclops, I think at this point we've played enough Ogroids already that this is not going to immediately get buffed up to 10, which means we're not going to proc the Thrive. However, if we don't play this soon, it's just not going to have any time to power up at all. So I think we are probably still either playing this now or passing and having this be the first card that we play in round 2. And at this point, I think it would be difficult for us to get up to Thrive, or rather get up to Might and or Sabbath. So I think we do pass here. And although they will have 4 points carrying over, we have one more card than them, and if we need to, we can certainly get more than 4 points of tempo in one turn. But if anything, we actually want them to try to push 2-0 here, because that gives us more time to play more cards, generate more points, and in doing so, potentially set up She Who Knows and or Chrum for carryover. So this is actually good news for us. We probably should play Nekker Warrior for... we do want to play this early. That's why I wanted to get rid of some of the engines that we had in at the beginning of the match. But Nekker Warrior we want to play early, as well as the Enraged Cyclops, because these guys are running out of time for setup. So I think we're just going to have a settle for Nekker Warriors that may not be that big when everything is said and done. But at least you will now flip over to a 10, which means we could, on our next turn, go Chrum in this row. Okay, Trickster does weaken you. They've played a lot of dwarves, so I'm not really sure how much value they're going to get on that infusion. The bigger deal is that this is now below 10, so we are not able to use Chrum in this row and get resilience unless we were to use Leader Ability Charge, which don't need to do that just yet, because we're going to drop this other Enraged Cyclops. As we're seeing here, though, this one is susceptible to getting controlled. More so than this one was, because this is at just 4 power now, and it will get locked. I guess we could have used a Carapace charge on it, but I wasn't really expecting for that to be their answer. Okay, so at this stage, I think now Tugo, for what it's worth, is another card that we'd like to power up a bit. Forgot that we had Tugo, to be honest with you. So, in which case, if we were to go Nekker Warrior, it would become a 4. We place Tugo on our next turn, potentially get some cards buffed up with Leader Ability, and then we have Might. That means we could drop Chrum. Tugo is a 2-point per turn engine at that stage. We have our Thrive on the board. So I think that gives us a lot of options. Torque has received a lot of hand buff. Okay, so they're clearly at this stage, after dropping Torque, they are trying to go all in for the 2-0. So I think that means we can get really aggressive here. We can, for what it's worth, play every single card in this round and still potentially win round 3, especially if we get carryover from both She Who Knows and King Chrum. So we don't need to hold back much here. I think it's definitely going to be Tugo. The question is largely, do we double Carapace to get up to Might right now? And I think we probably should. It does mean we are now out-tempoing them. Oh, right, with that Thrive proc, we'll take a turn before we're getting double. Okay, that is unfortunate to a certain extent. However, Geralt was the best counter for several of our cards. Now that Geralt is gone, that means it's suddenly safe for us to play things like Golyat, She Who Knows, and King Chrum, which would have been much worse to have lost. So I think we are not yet on Sabbath, nor would we be if we dropped She Who Knows at this stage. So I think we go Golyat here. Now that means we could go with She Who Knows. I'm a little bit wary of other control. Okay, I definitely expected to see a Glace, but it's not the biggest Glace I've ever seen, and we technically speaking would like to finish with Ogre Warrior if we can. So let's go She Who Knows, and at this stage, it would need to be melee row if we want to get Sabbath on this turn. Let's not put it in the rightmost spot, just in case. We could also put Carapace on you, although we'd kind of like to put Carapace on this Nekker Warrior, which would potentially make the Ogre Warrior bigger. Not sure that's necessarily going to be a requirement here, because we might have enough points to beat them nonetheless, depending on what this is. Is it Tall Removal? It is Igni. Okay, I suspected that they might have another Geralt of some variety, but it's not getting She Who Knows. Now we can go... I mean, question at this point is, are we going to have enough points to beat them at all? We certainly would have enough points to beat them in round 3, because we will have some carryover once we play Chrum, and it will be Chrum now. Okay, I think we're going to be fine. In fact, we don't even need to play Ogre Warrior, because if we were to go here, we have enough points right now, and we have 33 points of carryover as well. So they got really greedy trying to push aggressively in round 2, and they nearly pulled it off. But in the end, we punished them for their greed. Oh, true, technically, She Who Knows is going to give the resilience on Chrum anyway, so it's 23 points of carryover is enough. No need to play the Ogre Warrior. We've already won. Alright, so going up against Scioa'tael here, and they'll go first. Okay, and we did draw King Chrum. That's obviously pretty huge. We do have some of our smaller cards here, though, with the Nekker Warrior, Phooca's to a certain extent as well, and need to be careful, make sure we play those Enraged Cyclops early, otherwise they won't have time to evolve, since we won't draw into any more cards in this match. Let's dump the Nekker Warrior, though. The Ogre Warrior's a little bit tricky, because rounds will tend to be fairly short, might not have that many cards at 10 power or more, but we'll have to see. Alright then. Granted, we end up with another Nekker Warrior anyway. Alright, it's Denna for hand buff in round 1, and with their leader ability as well, they certainly have a lot of that going on, and I'm wondering if it might make sense for us to Lord Riptide immediately here, because the longer this goes, the more impactful that's going to be. So I think we just go for it. And they will start using that leader ability. And it's a pretty big Hawker Smuggler. That's more hand buff, and once again, the longer that lasts on the board, the more impactful it's going to be. If we do want to play here, then we kind of need to go Enraged Cyclops very, very soon, otherwise we run the risk of them not getting up to the immediate 10 power. We have enough Ogroids left in hand. We should probably still be okay there. Right, they're going all out on the hand buff, but I think what we do here to combat that is that now that we have a 10 power unit in this row, we could point slam King Chrum in the melee row. Then we have a whole bunch of carryover, and we can potentially 2-0 them. They have a lot of tempo as well, though, so in some ways this is a kind of similar deck setup for both of us. What I'm wondering is, do we Cave Troll to help protect King Chrum in case they have Tall Removal? That way they can't immediately go after Chrum, but I don't know. I think we might just have to take our chances here. Let's go for it. Basically, we've either just won the match or we've either just lost the match, in all likelihood. Alright, it's Hawker Support. That's more hand buff, but it's not enough tempo-wise, so we could pass here, and then they'd have to take at least one extra turn to try to catch us. They'd be multiple cards down in that case. I think we go for that, and then we might try to push for the 2-0 in the next round. Or at least maybe just drop the Enraged Cyclops in round 2 for additional tempo. Alright, it's a Glace, and I figured that's what they were trying to charge up, and it's not quite enough for them to beat us. We're tied at 37 apiece, and that means we have card advantage in a sudden death round 2. And we start with a 23-point Chrum already on the board as well, so pretty huge advantage to us here, you'd have to think. Let's start off with the Enraged Cyclops, just so that we have enough time for that to evolve. We also would like to get the Phooca on the board fairly quickly as well, but I think that can wait. And there is a case to be made for dropping the Cave Troll down in the melee row in case they did have Tall Removal, but we're waiting to use it. I mean, presumably they would have done that in round 1, but Okay, it's a big sorceress. I think now we probably, again, presumably if they had tall removal, they would have used it at this point. So I think we're going to delay the cave troll and instead optimize around the Phooca at this stage. So let's go Phooca here. Alright, so Dwarf Berserker gives them a little bit of damage. I'd like for you to stay on 10 power, because that will potentially impact how much power this Ogre Warrior has. Okay, figured it might be a Nature's Rebuke, though. Alright, fine. Phooca is gone. In that case, at this stage, unfortunately, you do get hit. The thing we are optimizing around would presumably be the Ogre Warrior, so we could still do some leader ability charges to get people back up to 10 or more power. Technically, Nekker Warrior is now an engine because it will not proc any thrives, therefore it will become a thrive card. So I guess we play that next. Alright, so then Synthesis, relatively big point slam, although we technically can match it. I think now, we might as well Cave Troll in this road, just in case they've been waiting to use their tall removal, although that does bring this row into Igni range. I mean, honestly, you could make the case, if they had tall removal, then they would have used it already, unless it was Igni, and we didn't yet reach the Igni threshold, in which case they're just waiting for us to get this row big enough for them to be able to use Igni. So, tell you what, I think you can actually make a perhaps even stronger case for deliberately putting the Cave Troll in that row instead. It's Torque. We know that was, of course, helping to enable Saskia, or rather, a Glace, not Saskia, maybe to a certain extent, the Synthesis, but, okay, so now let's go Pugo. Of course, we'd like for it to take either the Cave Troll or King Chrum. We don't want you to drop any further down, because that would make it more difficult for us to boost you up to 10 or more power. Okay, you'll hit Nekker Warrior and boost Nekker Warrior in the process. It's sure. Alright, it's Great Oak. They'll have to go after King Chrum. They are in the lead, but we are looking strong here with our 2-card advantage and full leader ability charges remaining. So let's go with that, and that's already enough. Obviously, we could Carapace here on a number of things, make the Ogre Warrior even stronger, but that's not necessary. They know we've won, and so they forfeit. Alright, so going up against monsters here, and we'll go first. Alright, and for what it's worth, I've played this person in this event before, and I'm fairly certain I know what type of deck they're trying to do. I mean, obviously, it's Arachas Swarm, so it's going to be control, and with that, we probably want to get rid of some of our little engines here, although, to a certain extent, the Nekkers are actually very nice to combat the Predatory Dive that I'm sure they will have at least one of, so maybe we do keep one of the Nekkers, and King Chrum is obviously a huge card for us, though, so good to see that. Ice Giant, Phooca, you could make a case for dropping some of those, but I think we'll settle for this here, because to a certain extent, I do want to have some throwaway cards to prepare ourselves for some of their control, because they are, in all likelihood, going to have a lot of tall removal. So let's start with the Nekker. That, I think, is definitely our best first turn play. Kikimor Stalker. Oh, it has that Zeal as well. Okay. Yup, well, we played around the Predatory Dive, but they had a different way to answer, and that was a very good Stalker play. So now we could play Phooca would probably be the next card we want to play. However, doing so walks straight into Predatory Dive, so that's not great. There'd be another reason why, for any other deck, you would usually take the Lamp Djinn in this event, but for our deck, it is not a great option, because we want to get big cards to help with Might. But that means this matchup is really tough for us. So we're going to drop the Phooca. And we might be about to lose this Phooca. No, it's Vigo's Muzzle instead. Okay, I mean, it's a more aggressive form of the same general idea. So the tricky thing is, of course, we pass here, we lost on even. That means that we're going to have to, at best, go down a card for the rest of the game. At worst, they're going to 2-0 us. So, I mean, probably better served to handle that if they were to push aggressively in round 2. Do we have a workaround at this stage? We would like to play Enraged Cyclops early so that we have enough time for it to increase to 10 base power. We don't have that many Ogroids left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So at least by the end of our turn, it would turn into a 10. So we do need to play it on the next turn. Is that right now, or is that at the start of round 2? I think we at least give it a shot. Predatory Dive is, as I said, a card that we knew they had, and we played around early, but they had a different way to answer our answer to Predatory Dive, so when they did play Predatory Dive, we didn't have a way to stop them. So we are in for some serious pain here. I'm thinking it's Ice Giants plus leader ability charge, and then that is at least, or maybe tactical advantage, although I like the leader ability charge so that it's on exactly 10 power. That means that Tugo on our next turn can relatively quickly do some double boosting. This is just enough for us to catch them. It obviously is not worth as many points as using tactical advantage would be, but if they have another predatory dive, which they may, then of course, rather not walk straight into that. Looks like they're going more the point scoring route here. Chris Telekinesis. Would be predatory dive. No, it's spontaneous evolution. So yeah, it's going wide, and that stalker, he is threatening. Okay, so the plan is now to go with Tugo. It is not enough by itself, and I was really hoping this would stay on 10 power so that way it would just take a turn before we have 2 cards at 10 power apiece. We have the Might, we have good setup for at least a 2-point per turn Tugo engine, but I think what we're going to have to do instead is go Tugo and then tactical advantage probably on Tugo, although they probably have more tolerable, so there is actually a case to be made for boosting up the Ice Giant instead, because that may make the Ice Giant the card they remove in that case instead of Tugo. Basically, their entire deck counters ours, as we have already seen. So, in many cases, these are all lose-lose situations that I'm trying to find the best workaround for. And there's, okay, the Glorious Hunt is exactly what I was expecting. Might happen. All right, well, if nothing else, we know every single thing that they have in their deck. It's just that we don't have a way to stop them. So it does mean that now things like King Chrum, which is obviously even more valuable than Tugo, is theoretically a little bit safer, although it is still possible for them to have some additional tile removal. So are we ready to play Chrum? Perhaps not. We do have 2 leader ability charges remaining, and if we are thinking about playing Renfri, then we might want to use those relatively soon. We could Cave Troll. Double leader ability charge is just barely enough, if I'm not mistaken. Now we are up by 1 point. We could very well play Renfri here. We absolutely could drop Chrum. They will pass. Okay. So that is interesting. It means we are 1 card down, but we do win the round against, as I was saying, a deck that has countered basically everything that we've thrown at them. So now the question becomes, do we try to push maybe for the 2-0, but more so to get the carryover from Chrum, so we can force them to play a bit in round 2 while still having 23 points of carryover in a short round 3. That might be very tough for them to be able to answer that. If we do that, though, we run the risk of having permanent card disadvantage, because if we do dry pass here, we're at 4 cards apiece in round 3, which is nice. So, is this enough already in a short round 3? Ogre Warrior is not going to have a ton of setup. Question mark is, what is Renfri going to give us? I think we at least drop Renfri here. I think it's Curse of Envy, because we know they like to go wide. None of these are valuable, but since we don't have time for the cooldown, since we don't have anything in our deck, we basically have no choice. And that is just barely enough for them. No longer have the Veil. I wouldn't have worked on a neutral unit anyway. But would we Golyat? In which case we might even want to put it in the melee row, just so we don't have Chrum getting the bleed. But we do that so we can play Chrum and get the carryover. And we're basically just crossing our fingers that they don't have a way to answer Chrum, and so that we have maybe no cards to play in round 3, but 23 points of carryover when they hopefully have not enough tempo to answer that. Let's try it. It's very greedy. Make no mistake, it is very greedy. Okay, so Arachas Behemoth, that is one of their best point slams. It's just enough for them. It's well done. So, if we want to do Chrum, we may need to do it on this turn because Golyat has now gotten the bleed from the Blood Moon, will take a lot of damage from that, and if they have other sources of damage, then of course they could potentially remove it that way as well. They may still have another, not Glorious Hunt, but what is it, the Curse of Corruption that removes the highest power unit on the board, in which case Chrum is gone. Basically, if they have that, we lose no matter what. So it doesn't really matter if we play Chrum now or if we play Chrum in round 3, they're going to be able to get rid of him. So I think we just play Chrum now, and we hope they don't have that card. If they do, they win. If they don't, we probably win. It probably does come down to something as simple as that. It might even be worth using a leader ability charge here. Or we do this. We won't use leader ability because that means we get one more boost on Renfri. We'll use leader ability on our next turn. We'll drop Ogre Warrior and we're relying entirely on Chrum, giving us the carryover in round 3. And if Chrum goes down right now, then we have no chance. Wolfsbane is a different way to do more or less the same thing. It is still technically a point of carryover. Watch them predatory dive and get rid of our 1-point Chrum. So we could Ogre Warrior, and in doing so, it would be 8 points. It'd only be 6 points in round 3. The other reason why I'd kind of like to take this turn is so we can use Curse of Envy, get pretty decent value there, force them to play a little bit more, and basically, our win condition then is that it takes them 2 turns to catch us, which I'm not necessarily sure is going to happen in this circumstance, but I'm not sure we have an alternative. So we got greedy, and we got punished for being greedy. So how much tempo do they have at this stage? Letter, which, with the Blood Moon, does have a little bit of setup, but they will need to play their last card here. It's Sultan's Scoundrel. They actually should go for the damage because they removed Chrum. Oh, we would have won by 1 point if they hadn't done that. Fantastic awareness on that part. Obviously, would have been worth more points in that round for them to boost with Sultan, but they didn't need that. They needed the damage. Now we're just going to tie. Well played. So there's a look at a Monsters Ogroids deck for the new Banished seasonal event. If you liked the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions we should experiment with next. And take a look at our Banished playlist to see previous decks that we've used in this event as well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.